We get started here. We'll start first with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll pray, and then we'll get going. So if everybody could stand and... I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, let's pray, and then we'll get going. We'll get Lauren up here. Alicia first, sorry. Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you for this time that we're able to get together. And Lord, that you would bless this time, that we are able to learn more. And Lord, that all the glory would go to you. Father, we pray for just the night and that you would just open our minds to the things that are new. Father, we pray all this in your name. Amen.
All right. Raise your hand if you're from Mille Lacs County. Oh, wonderful. Good, because I asked Deanna if she could share with you guys that this was happening. So Lauren is from Chisago County. He's the BPOU chair, and he was here before our county convention here in where are we? Anasanti County, right? Okay. So he helped us understand what the county convention is, what goes on there, what is a BPOU, and all those kind of basics. There's a flyer in the back. It says, get to know your candidates. And on the flip side is our website. If you want to hear his previous training, you can just go to that website and then go to previous events, and he'll be there. So then you can get kind of caught up to speed and all of that, because I don't know why the public school doesn't teach about BPOUs or Republican and Democrat Party, and there's a whole structure that goes behind it. It's like this phantom events going on that we'd even know. So this is really good that you're here, and thank you, Lauren, for coming. Now, Alicia, so we have our little county BPOUs. You also have this broader district, like our congressional district, and they also have people that we can vote for, delegates that are the legislative branch of that, and, didn't know that. So here we are sitting in our little BPOUs, and now we have this other structure that's part of what we're a part of too. It's a beautiful thing. I mean, you talk about grassroots. I mean, it's really amazing once you understand how this country was built and how the grassroots really is integral. I mean, as delegates, you're understanding now the power that your little vote makes in endorsing a governor, for goodness sakes. I mean, such a tiny amount of people compared to the population of Minnesota choose the endorsed candidate. And that puts a lot of sway into people's votes. That's amazing. So it's really exciting that you're here and that you're taking part in all of this and learning. And if you're not a delegate now, I mean, you can use this information and think about it for the next election. So with all that said, come on up, Alicia. And she's running for one of those positions in our congressional district. And so I just told her to start from the beginning and explain this from A to B to C and how this works and what she's running for. So thank you.
Is it on? Okay. So this is awesome that I get to help do this training, because before I ever decided to run for this position, I did caucus trainings. This is my 4th year doing them and teaching people how to become delegates. So I am running for what is called the chair of CD8, and I will talk about that at the end, but I'll kind of give you an overview of things before I talk about that. I'm assuming all of you, did you all attend caucus on February 1st? Okay. She told me I was doing training as I was walking in here, so yeah, that's okay. So caucus is very important, and I think if you're like me, you had heard the word caucus in the past, but maybe didn't quite understand how it fits into our political system. I know growing up as a kid, the only time I really ever heard the word caucus was the Iowa caucus on the news, but that doesn't really apply to us here in Minnesota. And as Dieta said, it's literally the definition of grassroots if you can attend your caucus. And it's where we as Republicans defend our values for life and Second Amendment not co-parenting with the government, protecting our jobs, lowering our taxes, and things like that. So it's very important to participate at that level. And I think this year we saw record attendance at caucuses across the state. I really don't think there were any locations that at the very least didn't have a decline. And I live about an hour and 15 minutes north of here, and last caucus, we had 4 adults come to 7 precincts. And it's a little disheartening when I live in a 72% Republican area to see 4 people. Part of that is, actually probably all of that is, people don't know. They don't know what caucus is, and they don't understand the impact that they can have. It's going to be silly, and you guys are going to laugh, but this time around we had 22 people come, and I'll consider that a win. That's better than 4. 17 of them were from my precinct. But it was really nice to see, and historically it's been people over 70, maybe even over 75, and this time around we had 2 young families that came. There was a husband and wife pair that had not yet had children, but they had transplanted out of Minneapolis up to our area. And I was our caucus secretary, so we gave them a few minutes to actually speak because they lived on the street in Minneapolis where the tanks were going down the street. And so there was a resolution at our caucus that would eliminate the governor's emergency powers. And bless his heart, this young gentleman stood up and he said, I support reducing the governor's ability to do what he did. But you also need to understand when those riots were occurring around our house and you see the tanks roll by your living room window, it got real for them. So they were able to add a layer of context, I think, to some of the debate that was really healthy for our caucus. And so is there anybody here that is a state or congressional delegate? I know you guys are. So quite a few, cool. So I'm sure you've figured it out by now. There is the delegate ladder that you can climb. You go to caucus, you become a precinct delegate, and then at your BPOU convention, you can be elected to state and congressional. And the questions that I have been getting lately are, what happens next? Where do we find the information? We don't exactly understand everything that we need to do or why. So let's see. Everybody here, I think, is everybody here in Congressional District 8? And it's okay if you don't know. Lauren, is this all CD8? Yeah, okay. We lost a little sliver to our west, so I wasn't sure. On April 9th, we will have a congressional convention in Duluth, and the purpose of that convention is a few different things. One, we will be endorsing our U.S. House candidate, and Minnesota has 8 congressional districts. So we always have 2 U.S. senators from Minnesota in Washington, D.C., and then 8 Congress people. And CD8 is represented right now by Representative Pete Stauber, who's a Republican. I'm sure that name sounds familiar to a lot of you. And as far as I know, as current as a few days ago, he does not have an endorsement opponent. And typically, the people who've participated at this level for a while now, and they kind of have the lay of the land here, sometimes they just won't go to the endorsing convention when they know that the person they're going to endorse isn't contested. But the other very important thing that's occurring on April 9th is, has everybody heard of redistricting? Redistricting? I've had to listen to that word for the last 3 years at my BPOU. With redistricting, all of our congressional borders were changed, which means all of our congressional organizations were dissolved. And I'll explain a little bit more of that in a second. So as of February 17th, we have 8 congressional organizations within Minnesota, and they exist no longer because the borders changed. So for example, in CD8, we have 3 people who were on that board that the borders changed so significantly that they no longer even live in CD8. So at the very least, 3 of those positions would be open. And the decision was made that because the changes were so significant, along with how many of the BPOUs had to be reformed as well, that they would have to hold an election now for the CD8 board. And it kind of looks like a pyramid. So you have the state party on top, which has the state party chair, deputy chair, treasurer, secretary, and there's other, smaller executive board positions. And then you have below the state party all 8 of the congressional district organizations. And then within each of those CD8s, you have the vast amount of BPOUs. So that kind of creates a linear picture in your mind, or a triangle, or a pyramid. So I am running for the chair of CD8, which means that I would be chairing meetings with over 40 Republican Party officers, and I think, Lauren, is it 21 BPOUs, or did we pick up a couple?
23 now.
23, right. So 23 BPOUs. And it's very important, whether you're electing your BPOU leadership or your congressional leadership, to make sure that you have qualified people in there and people who support our values and can function as the position is designed. And I run a clean campaign, so I'll just tell you my personal observations. I have been involved going to the BPOU where I used to live and the BPOU where we moved to for a total of 6 years now. I've been attending BPOU meetings, and I have never met anybody from the CD8 board. I've been politically active since 2014, and I have one of the state's largest unpaid citizen lobby groups called Minnesotans for Health and Parental Rights. And we have 20,000 members across the state, and we have representation in all 67 Senate districts. And I will say it again, I have never met anybody from the CD8 board. That is a problem, and I don't mean that in any ill will towards any of those people. They've been there a long time, and they've done a lot of good things. But when we're looking at a campaign season where we can actually make a lot of our congressional district red, you need people who are high functioning. Some of those people have been in for more than 9 consecutive terms, and they get very comfortable. And the bar becomes lower and lower and lower, and the longer and longer and longer they're in there, the greater their name recognition grows, and the more intimidating it can be for others to try to challenge them. We won't know exactly who or if any of those people are going to run for their positions again until no earlier than the 31st, but I was telling Dieta, probably the day of the convention. We're kept in the dark about a lot. So just a little bit of an overview of the political climate of CD8. It runs from Stillwater, which is just east of the cities. So I'm going to do it like this. So you have Stillwater here, all the way up west of Bemidji, and straight north to the Canadian border. It's 30,000 square miles. It's the biggest congressional district in our state. And as Lauren said, 23 individual BPOUs. So we're talking 70 candidates, Lauren, would you say, for House and Senate? Somewhere ballpark to 70, give or take 5.
23 times 3.
23 times 3. Yeah, so 69-ish. And what the duties of a CD8 chair or a CD8 board is first of all to honor its constitution. The BPOUs all have their individual constitutions, the CD boards have their constitutions, and the state party has their constitution, and we all need to follow that. And that's just the rules of the game. It has everything that we're supposed to be doing, it has different plans laid out for us, and our beliefs, and so on and so forth. And one of our top responsibilities is to support our endorsed House candidate to the U.S. House in Washington, D.C., which, like I said, I believe Pete Stauber, up until at least this point, is uncontested for his endorsement. So I feel rather comfortable saying he'll be endorsed. But I wouldn't undermine anybody that was trying to challenge him. I'm just trying to speak factually. And, so you can imagine with him being one person trying to get to all of that territory, it's physically impossible. So they end up having to hire staff to be able to be functional around in kind of different jurisdictions of the district. And to hire staff, you need money. To get money, you have to do fundraising. To do fundraising, you have to do public outreach. And when the people that are somewhat influential and responsible for some of this have set their own bar so low, it doesn't do our candidates any favors, and it doesn't uphold or give our values a very strong platform to exist on. Secondarily, we also need to be supporting our Senate and House candidates within CD8, which is a lot, 69. The Iron Range, which is SD7, the new part of the new SD8, maybe, if you want to call it that, and SD3. So that would be like Chisholm, Virginia, Hibbing, where all the mines are. That is currently blue. So it is Democrat held. And if you look at the voting history and the statistics, we're trending to flip that red this year. There have been some candidates. There's one candidate in particular, and I'm not going to mention his name, not because I don't want to, I would love to, but he has 3 other people contesting him, so I don't want to play favorites. This will be his 4th time running for one of those positions. Bless his heart. And he has closed that gap against the Democrat. I think, don't quote me, but I believe he lost by something like 13 or 15% the first time. Then he closed it again. Last time around, he went to bed winning and woke up having lost by 30 votes. Yeah. So he's running again. There's also 3 other people who are running again. It's a 4-way contested endorsement, so we'll have to see how that turns out. But those candidates up there that have invested that type of time, they've worked exceptionally hard. They've done the fundraising. I think he brought in around $90,000. So with just a little of our effort, we can help them, and we can turn that red. And I believe that will be the first time in our state's history. So we're going to make history in November. These candidates sacrifice a lot. They're away from their families at least every Friday, Saturday, Sunday for events. And a lot of them have day jobs. That gentleman I just mentioned is a full-time teacher. One of his opponents is a county commissioner. Another one of his opponents is a machine shop owner. They have stuff to do, but they have found this to be important enough to them and their families that they're going to either quit their job or take a leave of absence to uphold our values, and they deserve some support when they're endorsed. So, does that give everybody a good picture, at least a grasp of how this delegate ladder works and how it can impact every level? I guess I'll just say a few words about the state convention. I'm sure all of us have 1 or 2 particular governor candidates in mind that you would like to see as our endorsed candidate. And if you're a state delegate, you'll be able to attend the convention in Rochester on May 13th and 14th, where we'll go over some general party business, and then you can vote for your governor candidate of choice. And as Dieta said, it's so important. You have such a small percentage of people that influence whose name is on the ballot. I was talking to a friend of mine that ran for office for the first time this year. And in December, he made his decision to run. And I said, "Do you even know anything about this stuff?" And he said, "Well, I know the platform and I know the values and I know I can do it." I said, "Well, I know you can do it, but do you know how to run for office?" And it's exceptionally hard for people to run for office in Minnesota. You have to get the delegate list. You have to call the I'm sure your phones are ringing off the hook with candidates and governor candidates and whoever. you have to know what a BPOU was. This person had never attended a BPOU meeting. And other states don't have this. They go straight to a primary, and whoever wins, that's their endorsed candidate. So we exhaust and financially drain our people before we actually need them. And I mean that with a lot of love. I mean, we go through a lot that other states don't, and it doesn't make it easy on the candidates or the organization. So I think it's going to be really important at all levels to elect good people that are capable of fulfilling these positions. And delegates have the power to do that. And I know redistricting kind of threw a wrench in the gears here. Usually these leadership elections are not held in even years. It's usually in the odd years. So 1 year from now, we will again have to re-elect congressional board and BPOU leadership. So this is the oddball year here, and then it will be every other year thereafter. And for our House candidates, every 2 years, you're going through the caucus and delegate process and endorsing candidates. And I know those conventions get long, but it's necessary. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself, and I'll try to keep politics out of it so you can get to know me a little bit. But, you know, politics is a big part of who I am. I love it. I love our platform. I love our values. I love defending our values. I'm very proud to be a Republican. I have my permit to carry in 36 states. I grew up in a federal firearm dealer's household. We did all of the gunsmithing and ordering for our local police and sheriff department. So I remember as a kid, when dinner was ready, the kitchen table was the workshop. So we would have all these clips and uppers and lowers and try to find a spot to eat. I remember pushing all the springs aside and having to get this little piece of the kitchen table to eat dinner on because we weren't allowed to eat in the living room. And in my family, it was a rite of passage to get your permit to carry when you were 21. So we did that. I shot my first gun when I was 2. It was an AR-15 off the deck. And then I earned my allowance money by picking up shells and filling up ice cream buckets with shells because we were constantly sighting things in and working on things. And it's funny, our family doesn't own that property anymore, but it neighbors my mom's house. And I've stopped by there on occasion and waiting, as I've knocked on the door, I can do this and still get shells out of the gravel in the driveway. It's really funny. So Second Amendment is extremely important to me. I was raised in a family that didn't side Republican or Democrat. We were told that the Constitution is the only thing that we need to really be concerned about, and anything that falls outside of that, we need to anything that violates the Constitution, we need to stand up for our Constitution. I have 3 kids. Their ages, we just had a whole bunch of birthdays, bear with me. 6, 1 turned 8 today, and 1 will be 14 in a couple weeks. And my 14-year-old, she is in her 7th year of hockey. We're a hockey family. Yeah. She started hockey at the age of 5, so we're always all over the state, tournaments in Hibbing, tournaments in Roseau, wherever we're going. My husband's a hockey coach. He's a goalie coach. My 8-year-old is in figure skating and cheerleading. And my little guy, who's 6, is already in his 3rd year of hockey as well. So I'm tired by this time of year. It's a long season. We have a hobby farm. We raise all of our own meat animals. I teach slaughtering and butchering classes. I finally got my husband to participate in that with me. I was raised that was normal. He wasn't. We have a happy American life. We have our little laying hens that peck in the yard. We have a couple of goats. I have a huge garden. I do a ton of canning. And we try to teach our kids subsistence life skills and things, food preservation. And my family came to the United States from Sweden, and I like to tell this story. There was a lot of famine in Scandinavia at the end of the 1800s, and people had to make tough decisions whether or not they stay there because there wasn't enough farmland to support the people that were there. And my family were loggers, and they couldn't log everything, but they couldn't farm everything, so they made the choice to come here. And when they applied to come here, the U.S. government said, you need to have a sponsor, you need to send us copies of your bank statements, we need to know your 5-year plan, and we're going to verify everything that you send us. And I have all those documents. My aunt's in her 80s, and she said, hey, I'm not going to be here forever, so I'm going to give you the family file. They had $2,000 in their bank account. My great-grandma was 5 years old, and she was one of 5 at the time. And they moved here, and they got their farm up in Baudette on the Canadian border on the Rainy River. That's where my family originally came from. And they had sheep, and they logged. And they lived in an area where there were no roads until the 1940s. My great-grandmother dug her root cellar by hand. That stayed 40 degrees all year round. She was a midwife with the Native American tribes up there. And we have an interesting history. We've been here a long time, and they worked hard to get here. And I think a lot of you probably have similar backgrounds in your family. We're in Minnesota. We're the Scandinavia of our country. So I think we need to honor those people, but we also really need to protect our country for our kids. I want my kids to know that they come from a red state, where we don't have to be threatened from our government. We're not going to co-parent with the government. Parents call the shots. We decide what goes into our bodies. Our guns do matter. We like low taxes and all those things, and it starts with all of you guys. So I'm going to end and give the microphone to Lauren, but I thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Well, thank you for inviting me back. I'm going to be your tour guide tonight into a foreign country. I have been there, and I welcome you to come with me. And I'll be talking about what should I expect at the district convention and the state convention. Now, there's a couple of handouts that are in the back, and they're an agenda for CD8, and then a model agenda that we use in Chisago County. And the model agenda that we use in Chisago County is, we just used it this last week as we endorsed Senator Mark Curran. And that one follows much closer to the state convention. And then the other one is the CD convention agenda. It's from 2018. I cleaned it up in Photoshop, took off my hand scratching, and took off the names of people who were actually performing the various roles. So this is probably the agenda that you're going to see on April 9th in Duluth. Very, very close to this. And the only thing that would be different is at the bottom I put in there election of executive committee members. So we can refer to these as we go through our presentation here. First of all, I want to start with a district convention call. The state convention call has not been issued yet. It should be sometime probably later April. Have you received your call from 8th Congressional District? How many of you received it? Okay. You've got it? Email, yes. If you are a delegate or an alternate, you should have received it. If you have not received it, check your spam folder. Sometimes they just get in there. If you have not gotten it, ask a friend for a copy of it. And then if you have not received it, you might have been left off of the delegate or alternate list. And so if that's the case, then check with your BPOU chair to find out what your status is. And don't wait until you get to Duluth on April 9th to settle it, because it's going to be really tough to actually do it that day. So make sure that you get it and that you know that you have it. And then, have you registered is the other question. Now, there's already a late fee. If you haven't registered at this point, there's already a late fee. It's $50 to register, and then that would include a box lunch. And if you didn't get registered in time here by last Friday, I think it was, then it goes to $75 and no box lunch. Now, I'm going to talk tonight a little bit about some of the barriers, roadblocks, obstacles that get thrown in your way. And this whole business about a late fee is an obstacle, unnecessarily put in your way. And when I talk about obstacles tonight, I don't want to have you give up. What I'm telling you about the obstacle is so that you overcome it. So do not think I'm talking negative. So when I'm taking you through a tour of the foreign country, I'm telling you, you got to be aware of this, you got to be aware of that. So that's what I'm doing, not being negative at all. Now, there was a few conventions that just ended last week, and their deadline was so close that by the time they got their convention call, there was hardly any time to register without having a late fee. So there's been quite a few people put into predicament that totally unnecessary. Now, don't let that dissuade you. Just simply go along with it. Pay the extra bucks if you haven't registered. $25 10 years from now will be absolutely meaningless to you. So go for it. Count it as a donation that will eventually be used for some political signs or something, some campaign literature. And then if you have not registered at this point, arrive at Duluth and simply pay. That's the only way you're going to actually overcome this. And so take it, take the bull by the horns, get the job done. Now, in the convention call, the starting time of the convention is also not stated. And that's totally wrong. If you have a church meeting, you want to know the starting time. Well, it says registration opens up at 8 o'clock. And then no starting time. Well, okay, we got to go with the flow here, figure it out. And when you went to the registration site to pay your fee, it stated a time in there of 10 to 5, 10 o'clock to 5. Now, when you go there with a late fee at $75, that time is gone. I don't know why these people do these things. It's just totally poor public service. So anyway, from what all we can know is that the convention actually starts at 10 o'clock. And it says it's open at 8 a.m. and registration starts then. So you have plenty of time to get registered. And then it says in the convention call that registration closes 30 minutes after the convention is called to order. Now, so theoretically that means 10:30 is when registration closes. Now, do not be late. You get a flat tire, whatever, you get up late, get there, because if you get there at 10:30, you could be a paid delegate, and they may very well not let you in to actually participate and vote. Now, that closing of the registration is legitimate by the Minnesota Republican Constitution, as long as it's stated in the call that you could have a closed registration time. Now, the delegates can actually override that call and the time, but don't depend on it. You got 340 delegates at that convention, and here you come. with your hat in hand, begging to let you in. You suppose 340 are going to say, well, let's take time out here and debate this issue? No, don't even try. Now, that's a roadblock. I'm trying to tell you, avoid it. Don't even get close to it. If we have some different people in office, then we wouldn't have that piece in that convention call. So in Chisago County, we make sure that our convention registration is open throughout the convention in case something happens. Murphy's Law is always working, and McGillicuddy thought Murphy was an optimist. Anything can go wrong, it will. Now, these inadequacies in the call could easily cause frustration to the point of you deciding not to attend convention. But remember, you made a commitment when you filed to be a delegate and you were elected by your PPOU. Today, in our general world, commitment doesn't mean a whole lot. Well, I've been living with my girlfriend for 5 years, and we're thinking about getting married. Well, when are you going to get around to it? Make a commitment. Commitment is absolutely essential in everything we do in life. Commitment to your boss, commitment to going to get your degree, commitment to your wife, your family. So you've been irritated by the convention call. Well, you made a commitment to your BPOU that when they elected you to be a delegate to the district convention, that you show up. I have seen over and over again over the years that I've attended conventions where there's whole BPOUs that hardly have any delegates there. Just shirk their duty. So look past the failures that to meet your expectations, which every one of us have a little bit different expectation. Look past those failures to meet your expectation and commit to fulfilling your responsibility that you accepted. And we all have to do that as married people. Somebody who's been married for 50 years is a rarity nowadays. To the same person. So if you want to change your party, you need to be involved. Now at the BPOU level, you represent 90 Republicans. So when you attended the caucus, you were being elected as a representative for 90 people in your caucus or in your precinct, 90 Republican voters. Now, at the district and state level, you represent 675 Republican voters. Your responsibility has gone from 90 people to 675. You are making decisions in behalf of 675 people, so take your responsibility seriously. They have charged you with the ability to cast your vote in all of the different levels of electing officers, endorsing candidates, passing resolutions. Now, in the call, the agenda is stated. And
Can we stop there for a minute?
sure.
We got a major wake-up call here last Saturday when we were in Becker about 90 Trump votes and 60 Trump votes. You know, I look at this sheet here and I see 340 delegates. I'm thinking, is that real? Or some of these people count as 1.5 delegates?
Okay.
So, like I say, we got a major wake-up call here, at least I did last Saturday. Does that apply to this?
No, it doesn't. It's when you have a Senate district that crosses BPOU boundaries, so Chisago to Isanti to Sherburne or whatever like that, each of those BPOUs could have a different ratio of representation. So some could have 1 to 90, some could have 1 to 30, so that some places might be representing only 30 Republicans, whereas some are representing 90 Republicans. So that's a choice by each BPOU. Now, when you have a smaller ratio or a 1 to 30, you're trying to get more people involved in your BPOU. If you have a real active BPOU where you're already getting people out, you could have that 1 to 90 and still have a lot of people coming. But that different ratio kicks in when you go to a Senate district convention, and let's say you cross 3 counties. Each one of them have a different ratio. Now that's where you get your different value per vote. So if you had a county that has 1 to 30 and another county 1 to 90, the 90 person one has a value of 3 times more than the 30. So that is why you get that. It's all built into the state party constitution, so it's all legitimate and legal. And exactly how they come up with the 1.25, I don't know. I'd have to see the numbers on that.
Well, I read the Constitution. It says if you're a 1 to 90, you're a 1, and anything less than that is a fraction.
Yes.
Something different last Saturday is if you had 60 and Lax County is a 1 to 60.
We're almost there. You could do it the other way. 1 to 30 is 1, 1 to 90 is 3.
Okay. Yeah. Right, yeah. Then, they can't hear your question.
So anyway, Mille Lacs County is elected 1 to 60. And we were apportioned 1 vote for a delegate. We thought that's what we came for. Well, Isanti County is 1 to 90. So every delegate there got 1.5 when they voted. And I just about hit the ceiling when that happened, but I guess that's the way it works. But it really was an eye-opener. I don't know that anybody had a 1 to 30 there, but.
Yep. I'd have to actually know the numbers to figure out that 1.5. I don't know. Or 1.25. I'd have to actually look at the numbers. To me, it sounds a little bit strange. But it would make a difference in the endorsing of a senator, because they have to get 60% of the vote, and it could go one way above or below that, in a tight race.
Right. So, but this 340 is actually 340.
Yes. Yep. That's 340 delegates that will be attending the district convention, and they all have a value of 1 vote. Yep. Okay, back to the call. It states the agenda, and if it's not in the call, it cannot be acted on in an agenda at the convention. So there's 4 items that are stated in the convention call. And we'll come back to each of those items as we go through our evening here. Now, right, district is what you've got now. It's also true for the state convention as well. So everything I'll try to go back and forth between district and state. So what I'm saying here about the district is also true about the state agenda. Now, the district convention is a combination of an organizing and endorsing convention. At the BPOU level, we had an organizing convention. That's where you elected your delegates. You went through your resolutions. And then you had a House endorsing convention, and then you had a Senate endorsing convention. Now, the district convention on April 9th will be a combination. We'll go through resolutions, election of officers, and endorsement. So we have both an endorsing convention and an organizing convention combined. So it's a little bit different on that. And that's the way we don't have to have 2 separate conventions at a district level. Now, when you go to the convention in Duluth on April 9th, go early. Get there at 8 o'clock, register, and go there to meet the candidates who are on vying for executive committee positions. So you can go and meet Alicia. Meet them, get acquainted with them. Now, normally, we wouldn't have an election for executive committee members in this year because normally it takes place in 2023, 25, 27, 29, and 31. But because of redistricting, Alicia talked about it, because our CD boundaries have changed, we've gone from 21 BPOUs to 23, we need to have the election of the executive committee so we have proper representation from around the whole district. So changing membership requires an election. Now, the time length of the convention, expect to go to the convention that it'll go until about 5 o'clock. Maybe you'll get out at 4, starts at 10. And the time length depends on how much debate there is, and that's totally unpredictable. Things can get really bogged down. It takes a while to count the ballots for casting for 11 people, 11 executive positions. So all these things simply take time. Now, before the convention, based on the Constitution, there's pre-convention committees. There's a resolutions committee, and that committee is working right now. They're organizing all the resolutions that the BPOUs passed, put them on up to CD8, and there's going to be duplicate ones, so they're, okay, this one's the same one, and then there's some unique ones. So there's a committee that's working on those right now. Now, those resolutions, by Constitution, are supposed to be sent out to all the delegates no later than 7 days before the convention. Now, that doesn't happen, or has not happened historically, but I heard that it might actually happen this year. The state convention, they are good about getting those out so that you can study and those resolutions ahead of time. You can go prepared. But when we go to a CD8 convention, we get the list of resolutions handed to us at the time we register, and then we don't have any time to study it. We don't have any time to research it and so on. But hopefully this year we actually will. A convention will also have rules, just like you had rules at the BPOU level here, and as we did in the Senate District last Saturday. And again, by Constitution, the rules are supposed to be sent out to delegates no later than 7 days before the convention. Well, in this case, in CD8, don't expect them until you register. The state convention, or they will send theirs out in proper time. Now, again, don't take that negatively. I'm telling you so you can try to manage traveling through this and just accept it. That's nothing you can do. You don't have any control over it. Just do this, and then hopefully it can be changed in the future. And so then you might have to scramble and read the rules. But if you're a newbie, you'll probably read the rules and you'll scratch, what in the world is this? Well, if you're in that condition, don't get too concerned about it. There's going to be plenty of people there who, if there's something really wrong, they're going to be pointing it out. Then there's a nominating committee. And there's a nominating committee to work with the people who are running for office for the U.S. Congress. And they make sure that all those people are qualified. There's also another nominating committee this year, and that's for the people who are running for the executive committee office. And all those people have to file by March 31, by 3 p.m. They have to set up a time then to be interviewed on April 5th. And each of the BPOUs in CD8 get to appoint a person to that nominating committee. So I am going as the representative of Chisago County. And I know a number of others who are representing other BPOUs. So we will interview all those candidates who are, like Alicia, wanting to serve on the executive committee, one of those 11 spots. And then we determine if they're qualified. To be qualified, all you have to be, according to the Constitution, is a resident of CD8 and a voting Republican. And then at that point, on April 5th, we should know who is actually on the ballot. They historically have not told us ahead of time. There's been conventions that I go, and you find out who's on the ballot when you get there. Not very open. So what you need to do as a delegate is watch your email for candidate emails. Now, Alicia has sent it out already, and a number of other people have sent out, and then there's some people who are actually in the process, and you'll be getting emails from them fairly soon. So that's how you'll find out the most of the people who are going to be on the ballot. Now, arrive early at convention, so you're not late, number one. Number two, so you can meet the candidates and get acquainted so that you can vote intelligently. That's your responsibility. That's what you accepted when you became a delegate. Now, going to the agenda that I have given to you, the one that's marked 2018 District Convention, and then compare that to the one that I gave to you as a model. As we go through the agenda, CD8 does not practice electing a temporary convention chair. Normally, what we do in Minnesota, in the Minnesota Republican Party, is we open a convention with a convener, and then we elect a temporary chair, and we elect a temporary convention secretary. So it's very similar to when you went to caucus. You opened up with a convener, and then they elected a chair for that meeting. Now, that's not going to happen at CD8. Historically, it hasn't happened, and that is reflected in the agenda that I've given to you. And then they also don't give you any opportunity to adopt the agenda. So they give you a person who starts the convention. There's no opportunity to change that person and that to nominate someone else and elect someone else. Now, this violates a basic principle. The convention belongs to the delegates, not to the executive committee, who selected the person who would convene the convention. All these things are set up in Robert's Rules of Order. So you always wonder, am I affected by Robert's Rules of Order? Yes, you are. If you go to a church denomination convention, it's governed by Robert's Rules of Order, and they have developed in the Robert's Rules different guidelines as to how you would conduct a convention for a church, for a political party, for a financial institution, things like that. So these are rooted in good practices, long standing, and what they do is honor the rights of every individual. So what CD8 does is they say, top down, we're going to determine who's going to be the convention chair, and you don't have any opportunity to select your own as the body. And that sets people on edge. If you allow the body to select their own, you just disarm all the resentment that goes on. So that's a major difference. Now, at the state convention, we will have somebody who starts. We will have then nomination and then election of the person. And almost always, I've never seen it where you start with a convener and you get somebody else. It generally doesn't happen. There is a certain amount of preparation that a convener has to do to walk through all this. I mean, when I convened our Senate District Convention last Saturday, I had page after page after page of notes to make sure that everybody's rights are not violated. Now, through the convention in the district, you're going to see a lot more people say, point of order, point of information. And you're going to see motion on top of motion. And then you get to the state level, 2,200 people, you're going to have more. And you can, it can get tiresome on a lot of this stuff. But some people just love this, and they go to convention and just eat it up and show their prowess at how they can do all this stuff. But in the 2008 convention, state convention in Rochester, we had a very poor chair, and we had people lined up behind the microphone, point of order, and it never would quit. And those are the kind of things that get very, very frustrating. I hope that does not happen. Now, if you get frustrated by the stuff at convention, hang in there, don't quit. Remember, you made that commitment. So stay and just hang in there and stay to change it. Government goes to those who show up. And if you leave because they frustrate you, guess what? Government's going to keep on frustrating you. So get in there, get involved, and it might take you a couple of cycles to actually bring about change. And you guys have already changed Isani. Congratulations. And you just need to work on teams, get together with people, and then you will actually bring about change. And I expect great change this coming year, because I believe we're going to have essentially a new executive committee. Now, let's consider endorsement. That's part of the one of the things in the convention call. Pete Stauber, as far as we know, is running unopposed. I can't imagine anybody who's going to come out and say, even have a chance. So Pete Stauber will be endorsed. And so there will be a speech, and we'll have voting and so on, some rah-rah, and that won't take all that long. Then we'll have resolutions. And according to the email that we've received with regard to resolutions, it says resolutions will be an up and down vote on the report of the resolutions committee. And I take that to mean that when the committee gives us, let's say they give us 20 resolutions, after they've sorted through all the BPOU resolutions, they say these are the 20 that we're recommending to pass, then they want to have us vote up and down on that, all 20 at the same time, and not where you're going to reject all of them or accept all of them. Now, the delegates can change that, and they can say, no. We're going to vote on each one. And if we do, it's going to take longer. Delegates hate to be told what to do, which is, we're all independent, and we've had some fights over the resolutions where the resolution committee said XYZ, and no, we're not doing that. So I expect that this is going to be changed, and we'll be going through every one of them individually. And that then takes time. But in the end, don't you think that's a responsibility? Vote them individually? If you had one bad one in among 20 good ones, and we want to throw it out because of one bad one, and we're throwing out 20 good ones, no, come on, this is not reasonable. And then we have the election of the executive committee officers. There's 11 of them. This is the most important thing that you're going to do at convention in the district convention this year. We have a chair, a deputy chair, a treasurer, and a secretary. Those are the 4 people that keep the party running to make sure we have meetings, basic duties. Then we have a person who is the state vice chair. That person is elected from CD8 to be our representative to the state executive committee. Each of the 8 congressional districts has a representative on the state executive committee. So that person is very, very important. Then we have 3 vice chair women and 3 vice chair men. So there's 11 positions, and we hope that we have somebody running for each of those positions, and we'll know for sure by April 5th. And we may have some contest, we don't know. So it's your responsibility to read the emails when they send them out. You mean I got to read 4 paragraphs? I send out emails to our people, and then they ask questions, and I say to myself, well, you didn't read the second paragraph, did you? And we are getting in such a sad state as an American people that we can't read anymore. You just, 2 sentences, oh, okay, fold it up. Well, I'll get back to it. Well, tomorrow, that email is now off your page, and you've totally forgotten about it. And it's no longer bold, so doesn't catch your eye. I mean, it happens to all of us, but those things are very important. So study those emails that you get from candidates. Study Alicia's. Go to Alicia's website. Very, very important. When you're electing somebody who's got the responsibility of the CD8 and ultimately Isani County as well in mind, because all these are to help every BPOU. So take your delegate position very, very seriously. Then we have a constitution as well. In redistricting, because we have boundary changes, so we have new people coming into the district, we have some other people have gone out, and so now we have a different group of people. So we have to adopt a constitution. And that is going to also take place at the convention. So that's an additional item that normally doesn't take place in this year. I'm on the convention or a constitution committee. Each BPOU can appoint somebody again to that, to serve on that. And so far, nobody's suggested any change. I would suggest to all our people is let's not change our constitution. Let's adopt it with whatever inadequacies there are. And then throughout the coming year, we will have a constitution committee by the Constitution that needs to be established. And then we can amend it and present it a year from now for adoption. That is our normal cycle that we do. Our current Constitution actually can serve us well. It just needs to be put into practice. Just like the U.S. Constitution, guess what? There's nothing wrong with the Constitution. And if there is a little bit here and there, we can actually amend it. The problem is that our senators and representatives and the executive branch don't follow it. And that's exactly what happens in CD8. CD8 does not practice our Constitution. So we need to start it, and with Alicia, we're going to do it. So we will get our Constitution passed this year without any changes and then work on it. And there are things that we need to do to amend it. There's actually things in our Constitution that are not Republican principles. We need to get them out. I don't know how they ever got in there, but that happens. Somebody can come up with this harebrained idea, oh, this sounds wonderful, not realizing that it doesn't even follow Republican principles. We as a society are very, very ignorant about civics. I would urge you to go to the Democrat website, Minnesota Democrats, download their Constitution and read it. It's very good. It's very good. There's things in there that we wouldn't want, but for the most part, it is very good. They are governed by the same statutes we are as a Republican. They have the same caucus set up because they follow state statute. Conventions are also set up for them as well as for Republicans. So you can learn a lot by reading the Democrat Constitution. Now, a few historical things. Rochester, 2008. John McCain eventually was our endorsed Republican candidate. There was absolutely no enthusiasm for John McCain. And remember when Sarah Palin came on? There got to be some enthusiasm. And one sign in Chisago County was put up, Sarah Palin, vote for the chick. Nothing for John McCain. Well, at Rochester in 2008, that convention down there, the state party leaders would not let Ron Paul speak at the convention. Ron Paul was the up-and-coming person. The Libertarians were pushing him. He was in his prime back then. Well, Ron Paul spoke on the lawn on one of the mornings, and we had a lot of people go out to listen to him, but they would not let him come in and speak. And when you block somebody out, what do? You're creating a situation where people on the inside are getting disturbed and the people on the outside are getting disturbed. Just let them speak, and you take the fire out of everything. But they wouldn't do that. When I walked into the door of the convention in Rochester in 2008, state party leaders were there telling us, I'll describe the arena. 2,200 people can sit on the floor, and then there's still space. And then all the way around are bleachers, so it can seat a lot of people. So when I walked in the door, one of the state party leaders said, watch that guy up there, way up in the bleachers, and on motions, he'll tell you how to vote. Well, I thought, yeah, sure, you're not telling me how to vote. And that's the attitude of most of us. We had a very rebellious convention that year because the state party created it. You don't like to be told how to vote. You're going there because you have an opinion, and you have a studied opinion. So a lot of times they create their own problems by manipulating. Then in St. Cloud Convention 2012, 4 years later, Ron Paul was again very prominent in Minnesota. And in that year, for the RNC delegates, our Minnesota delegates to the RNC convention, Ron Paul had 32 of the 40 delegates that were committed to him. Now that year, Ron Paul was actually allowed to speak at the convention at the end. And I sat there and listened to him, and I totally enjoyed listening to him. Our responsibility is to listen to a variety of views. And that's how you all learn. You sharpen, you get sharper, because iron sharpens iron. Well, the Libertarians took over the convention that year. They had organized very, very well in caucus and got their delegates to convention. I never saw so many people with long hair and earrings, not just in your ear, but lips and elsewhere, and tattoos. I've never seen that many people in one place again. And that's the Libertarians. They just took over the convention. They really planned and did it. But when they didn't make any headway, they disappeared. They're gone. Never saw them again. You'll have a Libertarian here or there come to a convention, but nothing in mass groups. So you guys take a lesson from that. Don't disappear. Remember the moral majority back in the 70s and 80s? Well, have you heard about them since sometime in the 90s? No. Again, flash in the pan, movements have fire, and then they die out. Well, this is an ongoing thing. It never quits. Never quits. So 2 years from now, you'll have the same process. In 2 years, you got to pass it to your kids and grandkids. You can't ever quit. Government, when you have self-government, means you have to be involved. So you have to pass that along. Now, the party structure in Minnesota is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. The party framework is good, but it needs to be filled with leadership roles. The leadership roles need to be filled with good people. You can have an excellent organization, and it all depends on your leaders. And we need to follow our Constitution and actually perform what it says, and that will get the job done. So we don't need to throw the Constitution out, throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just actually perform the Constitution. So again, I would say, I ask you to take your position very seriously. You asked for the position at state. There's just 2,200 delegates who will be endorsing the candidate for governor, secretary of state, attorney general, and auditor. Now, why 2,200 people? That's because that takes a big building. And I think that there's only 4 buildings in the state of Minnesota that can actually handle that with necessary amenities for a convention. The one in Rochester, there's one in Duluth, one in St. Cloud, and then the Minneapolis Convention Center. So that's the only 4 that I'm aware of that can actually handle that number. And so 2,200 has been adopted sometime in the past by the Republican Party, as that's the number of delegates. And if we all of a sudden got a bigger auditorium, we could increase it, but then we'd have to go there every year. So that's why there's 2,200 people. And when you are voting to endorse a governor candidate, for example, you're making a recommendation to the 675 voting Republicans in your area. I'm in Schaefer Township. We don't have 675 voting Republicans. So I'm representing Schaefer Township plus part of another place. And that would probably be true for many of you as well. So it is a serious job that you have. Evaluate your candidates, their emails, their responses to other candidates. We already have seen that among the governors. A governor candidate will make an attack and you get a response. How do they respond? Viciously, factually, pointedly. Then go to their forums, go to their debates. Go out of your way to learn about them and get acquainted with them. Choose well, because you're choosing to make a recommendation to 675 fellow voting Republicans. So you think that, I'm not very important. You are. You really are. When your candidate does not make the next ballot at the convention, then you need to also know a second choice. Plan that second choice ahead of time. Things can happen fast at convention. It can get long and drawn out, but there's rules at convention that if you don't get 10% of the vote, then you're dropped. Now the 10% who voted for that person now has to figure out who else they're going to vote for. And we're starting out with 7 candidates. Somebody will probably be dropped off in their first ballot, and then the second ballot, and so on. So we could go 10, 12 ballots easily. Also plan when you go to the state convention. You might be there till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, so get your sleep, be rested, And the night before, when you go to the hospitality houses, the rooms for the different candidates, be careful how much liquor you drink. It's not a good mix for making a good judgment. I've seen several people who are smashed the next morning, and you think, you're not going to make a good decision. It's a responsibility that we have. And then if your candidate does not become the endorsed candidate, please support the endorsed candidate. The reason why the Republican Party exists is to endorse a candidate. One for governor, one for Secretary of State, Attorney General, and Auditor. And that endorsed candidate will come out of the May convention, then has to file in June. And if they miss the filing date in June with the Secretary of State, they're not going to be on the ballot. So they have to actually perform. And then we have August primary, and any one of those candidates or anybody else could then file and run against the endorsed candidate. And that does happen. It's happened with the Democrats. The last two governors, they were not endorsed by their conventions. They ran in the primary, and they're the ones who won. So there are certain candidates who think that they are so important that they don't want to accept the decision of 2,200 people. And I got to take the decision to the people of Minnesota. Well, we have an endorsing system here in Minnesota, the caucus system, and that's what we really need to work on. And what happens is that if you then have to go, let's say we have a governor candidate endorsed in May, and now we have somebody else who's going to vie against them in August primary. Now they campaign against each other, and they're delayed so that now to go against the Democrat in the general election, it hampers them. We spend money unnecessarily and so on. So we already know that an attorney general candidate, Dennis Smith, is going to the primary. So he's already declared that. So then there's, while we endorse a candidate, we have situations where, like in 2014, 2016, 2018, some in high office in the Republican Party did not support the endorsed candidate. And that gets really discouraging. We who are down here at this level, we endorse a candidate, then some of our own party leaders will work against them. And it's a complete violation of the basic reason why we exist, and it's one factor why there's so many new delegates. You hear about these kind of things and you say, I want to get involved and I want to change this. Remember that we, as a party, we consist of humans, and humans are going to make mistakes. We make mistakes. Sometimes we choose courses of action that are deliberately against the system or against the organization and against the organization's principles. So we have to be careful as human beings not to quickly judge somebody else because we fall and we need redemption ourselves. But we also need to hold our leaders accountable, and when they don't even support the endorsement, they need to be called on that. Now, I have developed a form here, and eventually we'll put it on our Chisago County website. And so you could go to chisagogop.org, and we'll put it there. This form is when you go to convention, I have all the BPOUs listed there, all the number of Trump votes for each of the BPOUs, and that totals 230,000. And then this column is the number of delegates that each BPOU has to the convention. Did you hand this out? Okay, so everybody's got it. Okay, good. Oh, that's where it is. Okay. And then over in the middle and on the right-hand side, when you have the preliminary credentials report, you can then put your hand scratching in there that so many delegates have come from Isani County and so on. And then you have an updated credentials report later on in the convention, and you can put that in there. And then keep it for history. History is everything. When you begin to see trends. When I first got involved in CD8 and went to my first convention in 2006, we had less than 300 delegates going to CD8 convention. Now there's 340. Now, how does that happen? Well, it happens because the whole state is divided up among the 220 or 2,200. But this year, you have more Republican votes in this congressional district, and this one has gone down. And historically, CD8 has had more and more Republican votes in it. So that's why we're growing, and that's why we have more delegates in CD8. And then others are losing. Now, in Chisago County, back in 2006, we had 22 delegates to CD8. Today, we have 33. So in Chisago County, we have grown in the number of Republican votes. And I haven't tracked what Isani has, but Isani has also grown as well. So these are nice things that you can keep for history, pass them on. If you don't keep it here for your own BPOU, don't expect anybody else to. And it can be tough to find out all these things after the fact and recreate them. But this is a tool that you can use. You can then, at the state convention, of course, you'll have 8 CDs to do, and it gets to be tough, but you could actually bring this for your 8th congressional district and keep track of how many people show up at the state convention, and then how many alternates actually come and get seated. I would urge you who are alternates, especially high-ranking alternates, go. You might get seated. Go and learn. Because next time around, you might be there. And I've given you a tour into this foreign country. Well, if you go this year, 2 years from now, you've already been there, so you know a little bit what to expect. Well, thank you for being a good audience. I will open it up for some questions, answers, if anybody has anything. And over here.
I have many questions, but I'm going to start with an easy one. You just mentioned briefly that the alternates would be suggested to go. Now, I'm a delegate and I'm going to convention, which in itself is a confusion. We keep talking about convention, but there's multiple conventions, right? Like for myself, I have a convention Friday night. That's for the
District
endorsing
10?
convention.
District 10?
District 10.
Okay.
And then I'm registered for one on the 9th, I believe. That is in Duluth. And then the next one is the state convention, correct? But what happens when I keep hearing this stuff, we just say convention. I get lost on which convention we talking about.
Okay.
So, but my question is, on the alternates going to convention, any of them, I presume, or all of them, they are necessary because there's no guarantees that all of us delegates are going to show up, not have a flat tire, as you said, or oversleep, or in one instance, guy got too drunk and he couldn't get up, right? Or couldn't drink enough coffee to sober up. The alternates are important because if the delegate doesn't show up and there's no alternate, we lose. We lose a seat, correct? We lose a vote. So, yes, the alternates, please show up. especially the high-ranking delegates.
Yes. I'll give you an example. In Chisago County, Connie Thorpe is part of Isani County now. She's been elected as a delegate to CD8 and state. Well, she used to live in Chisago County, just across the street, across the county line. I can't remember which year it was, but she was elected the 44th alternate, and she was seated at the district convention. Now, what that meant was, in Chisago County, that 44 people before her in ranking had to not attend the convention in order for her to be seated. 44 people. So you're exactly right. So even if you're a low-ranking one, you still might get seated. My first time when I went to CD8 in 2006, I was alternate 14. I got seated. I had no expectation that I would get seated, but I was seated, and there were people beyond me who got seated. So there was an awful lot of people who did not show up.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions. So I'm going to the state convention as a delegate. I will get an invitation then on email, and then also registration will be part of that, or what?
Their invitation probably will come by mail. It could very well come by email. I do not know. I think all of them in the past have been by mail. And then it will give you information in there as how to register.
Okay.
And usually that's done online. You could also send a check-in. I think that there's both ways.
Okay. So it'll come by snail mail, by
Yeah.
paper
keep
mail.
watching snail mail and email.
Second question I have, too, is when we get down there, is it the executive committee that makes a lot of the decisions?
Yes.
Which group of people, if they change some rules or whatever, who's making those decisions?
The executive committee is responsible, the state executive committee is responsible for the state convention. And they will appoint various leaders to handle resolutions, to handle rules, nominations, so on. And they always do an excellent job. Those people are behind the scenes. You may not even know. You'll probably see the chair as they make a report, and they might mention names, and a lot of names you won't even know. But they do an excellent job at all of that. And you should get resolutions 7 days in advance. You should get rules 7 days in advance. Pay attention. I remember at one of the conventions, one guy got up and he was just vituperously complaining about not having resolutions and all that kind of stuff. He was informed that, yeah, you've got him. So he was really embarrassed. So you got to actually read stuff. So, okay.
So I'm an alternate, and I've already pre-registered, and I've got a hotel room for Duluth and everything to be there the night before. But what if I don't get seated? What can I do? How long do you have to wait for everybody to be seated to be able to go in? How does that work?
Probably within a half hour, you'll have a credentials report, and you know how many vacant delegate seats there are. And then you will, as alternates, find out the ranking ahead of you gets seated first.
Okay.
And it may or may not get down to you at your ranking. So all that happens at the convention within half hour to 45 minutes, something like that.
Okay.
And then if you're not seated, just stay there and watch, observe, participate.
Okay. So we can stay even if we're not seated?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely. And watch and learn for the future. And then you can be involved in all the campaigning for the endorsed candidates. You just don't have a vote. Not everybody gets a vote because we're doing it by representation. But stay tuned, stay involved. You can do everything for campaigning. I'm going to go back to your state issue. If you want to make a reservation at a hotel in Rochester, you could do that now. May 13th and 14th is a convention. You're doing a little bit blind. I've made mine already. Look up Rochester, and Google Skyway, and they'll give you a Skyway layout for walking to the Mayo Civic Center. And there's a lot of hotels very close. You can get a hotel a ways away and drive, and there's parking right there. You'll see all that on that layout. It's a nice layout. And so I made my reservation. I'm going to go there Thursday night so that whenever the convention starts on Friday, I'll be right there, ready to go. And then I'm staying through Saturday night because our endorsing is going to go late Saturday night. I won't be wanting to drive 2-3 hours home. And so make a vacation of it, make it enjoyable, meet your friends, and then plan to go to hospitality suites, or they'll probably have them in bars and restaurants and that, and get acquainted. There's free food from the campaigns, and just get acquainted. Just have a grand old time. Savor the flavor.
I have a question about the tellers up in district. So before they have the vote, do they have volunteers as tellers, or do they already have the tellers chosen? Can we volunteer to be a teller to count the votes?
Sometimes they have them all selected ahead of time, and it's pretty frequent that they do. Once in a while, they ask for volunteers. I don't know which way they're going to do. They're oftentimes ill-prepared. The state is much more prepared, and but it'll take a while to count, so we got to have a number of tellers to count. And so be prepared, offer your services. You could offer your services through your own BPO, your chair, and they might pass that on. So,
I believe in regard to the alternates, once everybody is seated, so that the whole delegation is seated, even if there are still alternates that have not been seated, sometimes people will have to leave, and then another alternate can be seated in that person's place.
that's correct, John.
Yeah.
Yep. Government goes to those who show up. And you may not get your turn this year, but then you're prepared for next time.
How do you know what ranking you are for an alternate?
I believe, are you and I, Sandy?
Correct.
I think it's still on the website. They had all the delegates and alternates ranked on the website. So you should be good on that.
Now, I know this is supposed to be a question, so I'm going to start out that way. Is everybody as confused as me? Awesome. We have at least one. Just as a matter of suggestion, as we consider all this, both you and Alicia went from saying Congressional District 8 to then maybe in the next sentence using the term CD, and then we talk about SD. So is it Congressional District 8, Senate District, whatever, right? So as a point of order, it would really be wonderful, because I'm very involved and I have a high IQ. I know you can't prove that right here, but if I am confused as I go to all of this jara, as we talk, so here's another one, BPOU. I still don't know what that really stands for. We switched ours in Mille Lacs County. We're calling it the Mille Lacs County Republican Party. Because I can understand that. So, bear with me. As we talk about all this stuff, and we are all digesting, not just the directions to get to a new facility and what time, the confusing directions. I told Larry when I got here, if you do get your convention call and you read it and you're not confused, I want to know what your IQ is. You know what I mean? It is absolutely, and then you just explained there's a whole bunch of changes immediately. What time it starts, how long after it starts, till you're too tardy to show up. I mean, it is a lot, right?
Yes.
So anyway, I'm just asking, please, as you talk, try to just spell it out. If it's congressional district, say that versus CD, because I get just confused.
Yeah, and every field of employment, whatever, teaching, you have your language, and yeah, it's easy to talk that way. The gunsmiths will have their language, the farmers have their language, and
We're all a mixed crowd.
yes, and so yes, and the other thing is that it takes 7 times for all of us to learn. So even if we explain everything totally elementary, it can take a lot. But you are in Mille Lacs County? Okay, Mille Lacs County is a BPOU, Basic Political Organizing Unit. That's a mouthful. I wish they would have designed something better.
Are we still a BPOU after they rename it to Mille Lacs County?
Yes.
Yes.
Because it'd be like the Isani County Republicans. It's the same thing, but they're a BPOU. And then you have a House endorsing convention, which reaches elsewhere other than Mille Lacs. You go out into some other counties as well, a little bit here and there. I believe you come into the northwest corner of Isani County.
Yes, we do.
So that crosses BPOU lines, and so now you have a House district endorsing convention. But that is different than your county organizing convention where you elected delegates. Then you have a Senate district as well, so now that reaches twice the area.
And an A and a B.
Yes, A and B is the House and for each of the two, and the Senate district is 10. 10A is one House, 10B is one House.
See how even a pretty smart guy could be confused? You get it?
Yes. So labeling is important, and we all have to label in order to talk. That's why people name us. Our parents name us. So just keep following it. And right now, because of redistricting, it's worse because we've changed boundary lines. Eventually it'll become second nature to you as you talk about it. Do you have a question?
Change it again before that happens.
Go ahead.
I thought I heard that Kurt Doubt is going to be the convener up at Duluth. Do we know that to be true?
I've heard that. I believe somebody heard that directly from him. I have not. I've only heard it around grapevine. He has often convened the conventions in CD8.
Going back to the BPOU, is that the same as district?
BPOU
I don't.
is not the district. The district is the congressional district, which contains now in CD8 23 BPOUs. So the state of Minnesota is broken down to 8 congressional districts. Each congressional district has a different number of BPOUs in it. So our number in Congressional District 8 is 23, and most of them are county BPOUs, and then there's Senate District 33 up in Duluth area and Senate District 8.
Okay, so is it the same as a precinct?
Precincts are the smallest level. Precinct is your geographical area where you actually vote. So it's
So when we go to caucus, what is that called?
caucus, you caucus by precinct.
By precinct.
Yep. So North Branch, for example, has 3 precincts, A, B, and C. So there's 3 different precincts where they elect their own delegates. And then they send their delegates to the BPOU, which is a county convention. And so that's the next level up. Then it goes up to the congressional district.
Okay, thank you. And then is there an org chart anywhere that you could see this structure? Do you have that on your website, or is it available through the Minnesota
Yes,
GOP?
we do on Chisago County, chisagogop.org/convention. There are 2 flow charts on there. One is for Chisago County organization, and then the CD8 organization. Were you here when I spoke previous time? Okay, I showed those. We showed them on the screen real quick. But go to the website and download them, and they have the structure and the purpose for Chisago County and the structure and purpose for the CD8. So you just got to look at that flow chart. So yeah, a lot of this stuff, it's just all over the place written, and there's not a whole lot where you're going to have it organized. I've attempted to do that, and also when you go to Chisago's website, you'll see what is a precinct or a caucus, what is a district convention, what is a BPOU convention, what is a state convention. So all that will help very much. And I put it in question and answer format.
Okay, here's my question. I don't want it to be about me, but I was number 21 as an alternative, but I had planned on going, except for I never got this letter. I haven't seen it at all. So now I'm responsible to pay the $50 plus the $25, even though it wasn't my mistake that I didn't get a letter?
Yes, yep. Well, it wasn't a letter, it was an email. Have you checked the, yeah. It's amazing why some of these get into the spam folder. We don't know why. And that can vary from computer to computer. So,
Okay, thank you so much, Lauren, for coming, and you as well. Question about the resolutions. When we get to the state convention, when will we get these resolutions? Will we have time to look them over and talk to each other, or how will that come out?
the state normally sends them out so that they're 7 days in advance of the convention. That's by constitution. And again, I'm not sure if they'll do it by mail or email. They have the option. So back to you. Are you and Isani? Talk to your chairman, and find out. Look at your email first. Talk to your chairman, and have her go to bat for you. I mean, I do for my people. I argue my case. And once in a while, it happens that there's a true mistake has been made. The person who sends out the email is not trying to cheat anybody. He's an honest guy. Yep. I'm just making that as just a general observation. In that, I don't think there's anybody. He doesn't know you from anybody else. So, but some things do happen.
Lauren, if you're searching for something you might have lost, mine came from chair@stlouisrpm.com. So if you want to write that down and do a search for that, it might be in your list.
Yep.
chair@stlouisrpm.com.
Yep. Thanks, Gary.
I have a question about state convention. So we will be meeting on Thursday. It'll be Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Is that what you're saying? And then also, when we go, there's 2,200 people there. I'm assuming there's no assigned seating, just first come, first serve. Who goes on the floor? Who's up in the bleachers? How does all that work too?
Okay. For seating, if you're a delegate, you automatically go to the floor. And so they will have a map where you can look. They'll probably actually have a printed booklet that you'll get. So it'll have rules in it. It'll have some advertising from the governor candidates, things like that. And it'll have a seating chart in there. And so Isani's over here with CD8 over on this side. And so you will see that. And then they usually have sticks and signs that you know the BPOU, Isani is sitting here. So just watch for that. Then alternates will be seated in a designated area, and they may be mixed with observers. And then when the alternate gets to be seated, then they get to sit on the convention floor. And then your question about Thursday night. I'm going Thursday night because the convention will probably start 9 o'clock on Friday morning. I'm assuming that that's going to be the case because the amount of work that is going to have to take place to get done on Friday and Saturday. I've heard that they're talking about State Central Committee meeting on Thursday night. So State Central delegates and alternates could be there Thursday night and conduct that business. I won't go into what that committee is, but it's it's in a very important committee. They actually will meet, and I think that that's what we've been hearing. Nothing is official yet, but just preparing.
And you said then Saturday night could go late.
Yes.
Okay.
Friday night could go relatively late as well. You're going to have a number of speakers, not the candidates, but a number of the speakers. There's a lot of people that get to talk, a lot of action that we need to take care of. And then we'll have, like the auditor endorsement, for example. Right now, Ryan Wilson doesn't have any opponent, so that'd be a slam dunk one real quick. But then you get into contests, and who knows how long it can take. So they'll do some of the easier ones first, and the governor is almost always last. So it gets drawn out.
It's your lucky night. I'm up again.
I'm glad to help you. Actually, I enjoy helping people.
So a little commercial break. The governorship race, all the candidates are in Brainerd on, this is my ticket information, but Wednesday night, the 20th of next month, starts at 5 o'clock. It's going to be great. They're organized. They already have all of the candidates committed to this event. It's a big, huge deal. And everybody that's interested in these races and learning about the candidates could and should go. So on that note, you said earlier that there is going to be a whole bunch of confusion. Sometimes I call that cluster schmuck. For example, the Constitution is going to be maybe even violated, but just go with it anyway. And then you also suggested that there's going to be this list of maybe 20 things, amendments or something, I forget what you said, that they'll ask us to vote, resolutions, to vote in a package deal. First of all, I would never be in favor of going with a constitution and just saying I'm okay with it if it's not finite. However, I'll take your lead and suggestion on that. But I definitely wouldn't vote for 20 items without knowing what each item is and making sure I have approved of each and every one of them. Nobody's going to vote a package deal through with me there. Having said that, would it be fair, and I think this is the right term, that any one of us delegates would stand up and say, point of order? Is that the term that how do you prevent? Okay, that's the question. How do we prevent this from being a package deal of 20 resolutions?
Somebody will get up. They'll have microphones set up so you can go and stand in line in a microphone so that everybody can hear you. And somebody will make a motion to change how the resolutions are going to be handled. And some of the old timers are going to stand up and make that motion. They would be prepared for that and to do it. Then there'll be a little bit of debate, 3 people for, 3 people against, and then you vote up or down. So I would expect it to actually happen like what you would desire, and that you'd actually vote on every one of them. I just knowing the people, I can't imagine that that's not going to happen. with regard to the Constitution, if we debate if once we start debating the Constitution and we want to change this and this and this, we'll be there for 2 months.
Well,
So then, it has to get changed in the next 12 months.
Yes, yes.
And we as a party need to make that as a resolution. Let's not let this crap keep going.
Yes, and that probably will be made, the Constitution Committee will probably make that motion that we recommend it be adopted now and then immediately start changing. The Constitution itself says that a Constitution Committee is appointed to immediately start working on it. And each of the BPOUs, the county parties, has a representative to that, as long as you actually use it. If you don't use it, then the BPOU is just out of vote. And then that would be presented a year from now. It's going to take a lot. I have numerous recommendations of changing the Constitution in many, many small ways. Functionally, it probably won't really make much difference, but there's a lot of improvements that could be made.
okay, my third and last question, the last question of the night is, how are the governor candidates endorsed at the state convention? Does someone stand up and do it and talk about them, or how's that go?
Okay. Right now there's 7 candidates. Each of the candidates will be allowed to make a presentation. They'll probably have, each one will probably create a video. And it gets, pretty high-tech stuff. And as I recall, most of them are like 20 minutes long. So this is going to take a while to get 7 of them. And then they each get to speak as well. It's defined in the rules how long they can speak. A lot of times the candidate will have somebody on their team. They nominate the candidate, and then there's somebody who seconds them. They give a seconding speech, and then they have 25 or 30 people up there on the platform with them, waving the signs and so on, that these are the people supporting them. And then, you really get into this, and it's significant. And then you go through all 7, and then you vote. So it'll take a while, and you vote then, and then it takes a while to count the ballots. It'll probably take an hour and a half, 2 hours to count the ballots. And then you come back with a report. Well, candidate X made 8%. He's out. Now those votes can go next round with somebody else. So you'll go through this. I remember 12 ballots for a U.S. senator back some years ago. So it can take a long time. You have to get 60%. Okay. Yep.
So when you say 12 different ballots, did everyone vote 12 times or just the ones that voted for the one that dropped off?
It was voting for a U.S. Senate candidate. It was a 2-person race, and it took 12 ballots. What happens is that I get stuck. I'm voting for my guy. Everybody's going to vote for the same, so you come out very, very close on all these ballots. You don't change much. And while they're counting ballots, then the candidate comes around, tries to twist your arm, vote for me, vote for me, try to persuade you. Maybe some of the congressional district leadership will come around and, yeah, Lauren, you need to vote for this person. And I never changed my ballot ever. Right at the end, I still never voted for the endorsed candidate because I didn't think that person was good. So I voted 12 straight ballots, but somebody had to change. What happened that time was 2:30 in the morning, we finally broke up. And then we adjourned, and then the next morning, a bunch of new delegates came in, and they voted for the other guy. So what happens is that we who are older, we gradually start dropping off midnight, 1 o'clock. So the really conservative people are dropping off. So the more liberal people are there, and so they can actually change the vote. And then the next morning, you had a whole bunch of people actually show up now. Somehow they didn't think they needed to be there before. Now they come in and change the whole vote. And so in 2 ballots, everything switched. So timing is important, and being there, sticking it out. Governor Pawlenty, when he was endorsed, that was 3:30 in the morning. The conservative people tend to leave, and now you can have another group that are willing to endorse and so on. So it's more than a game, but there's a gamemanship to it.
So that's an example of what you were saying over here, that a delegate could be there all day and then actually go in and be seated at like midnight because somebody leaves. Does that happen?
Generally not. It's one of those things where I'm not sure how much the state allows a delegate to leave and somebody else to take their place. If you leave the convention totally, somebody could come in. But if you, to switch back and forth, it's a lot of record keeping. So if I go out for lunch and I have Sue come in and sit for me, I'm not sure that that's allowed. I got to investigate that one.
Okay, any other questions from anyone else? Are we good? Oh, one more.
Just to throw a little more confusion in all this is we could go through all this and endorse somebody and they could still lose at the primary.
Yes, yes.
And you could be voting for somebody else.
Yes.
So
Yep.
Can you explain, my daughter wants to know and she's too shy to ask.
I've never voted before. I don't know these words.
Can you explain why we have a primary?
When will you be able to vote?
Next fall.
Okay, so by November you'll be 18.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Why do we have a primary? Because it's fair. Some states don't have the caucus system or endorsing like we do. Wisconsin has only a primary. And so they don't endorse a candidate. Candidates simply vie and are up for election at a primary. Iowa, of course, they're a caucus system like we are. Similar, probably not identical. But we have a caucus system plus a primary. And so any person has a right to run for office. So when they go and ask us as a party for endorsement, they're requesting it, and we as a party can grant it. And we grant it to one person. But then anybody on the outside can say, I want to run, and they can go and file and running in the primary. And they're calculating all their risks and doing it and so on. But yeah, there's plenty of people who, well, like in the Democrat Party, Governor Walz was not endorsed, but he then ran in the primary and then took it. So it's just the fair way. You can't block anybody out.
If we endorse a Republican candidate, are you saying that yet another Republican from the outside could still come and run against our endorsed candidate? Yes. And would that then have the capability to split our vote, right? Because some Republicans vote for them, some for the other guy, our endorsed candidate, and the Democrat that opposes or runs against them may only be one and get all the Democrat votes. So it's not in our party's favor to have a competitive Republican race, correct? I mean, two people.
Right. Yes. It divides money. It costs extra money. It divides feelings and so on. and it gets harder. And then historically, the Republican who does try to go in a primary almost never wins. Right, yep. Going to a primary without endorsement, yes.
But when is the primary? Like in August?
I think it's second Tuesday in August.
Right. So the primary is only the Republicans running against each other. Then we have one Republican running against the Democrat in November. Yep.
So at the primary, any competitive Republican.
Yeah. Yep, then it's just Republican, yeah, yep,
Yes. So,
yes.
for example, in 2018, the party endorsed Jeff Johnson to be our Republican candidate for governor. Tim Pawlenty, who had been governor, he wanted to run. He did not seek endorsement from the Republicans, and then he went to primary and he lost. So it's incumbent on the Republicans who do the endorsing to get out the vote, actually go and vote themselves, plus get other people to vote as well. And Tim Pawlenty lost his endorsement. Excuse me, he lost the primary. But he created waves, and it's not ideal at all. And when Tim Pawlenty came to the CD8 convention, he was not really asking for our endorsement. He was just simply spanking us for not voting for him. We were fools for not accepting him. He was very angry at the convention. I couldn't believe, I knew a different Tim Pawlenty, and I was very disappointed in him, his attitude. There's moneyed people that will get behind these candidates, certain candidates, and kick out lots of money and entice them to run. And they think that they can actually accomplish it. And I think that's what happened to Tim Pawlenty. And then in the end, he couldn't. But it does hurt the party to a certain extent, so Jeff Johnson is put behind the game a little bit.
Okay, oh, one more question.
So as an alternate going to state, if I get seated on Friday, will I automatically get seated on Saturday? Do I have to wait in line again to see if other delegates show up, since I'm an alternate, not an actual delegate?
You will have to wait. You'll have to sit in the alternate section, because a delegate always gets seated first. And then if you're, let's say you're alternate 14 and you're actually seated, and alternate 3 comes in, then alternate 3 gets seated and you have to move out.
Okay.
So it's all based on ranking. You know, and that's just the fair and square way. So yes, you'll have to be, they'll have new credentials report in the morning and new seating of alternates.
And is it just the alternates then in my area, or all of the alternates?
It's, are you in Isanti County?
I'm not. I'm in Mille Lacs.
In Mille Lacs. Okay, so you will be competing with the alternates in Mille Lacs County only.
Okay.
So I just took a receipt of a donation to a campaign, right? To a candidate. And I got this thing from that candidate that says my donation, I'll leave out the amount, but I can turn this thing into the state of Minnesota and get a refund. And I'm guessing you've seen this form.
Yes.
It is absolutely hideous. We should be embarrassed. But at the most, no matter how much you donated, you can tally up all of the lines, and at the end, it says enter the amount from line 1 or line 2. It depends on whether you're filing married or individual. Whichever is less, this will be your refund amount. By the way, it's going to come out to $50.
Yes.
So
yes.
If you gave $100,000, you could get a rebate of $50.
Yes.
Here's the beautiful thing. If I got that $50 rebate, I could pay her way to the convention.
There you go.
But other than that, why would anybody fill this out?
Well, you can thank the Democrats for putting this program in a long time ago. And it's funded out of your tax dollars. So you get to direct $50 of your own tax dollars to where it's going to go. So you can go give it to a candidate. You could give it to your own local party, BPOU. You can't give it to Pete Stauber or a U.S. Senate candidate. So anybody in the state, a governor, you could give it to. So we Republicans think it's rather poor to do this, but utilize the program. I do, because you can then direct $50 of your own tax dollars as to where it goes. And if you don't use it, plenty of other people will. So anybody who gives $100,000 is probably not going to use this.
No.
That's like a penny in our pocket.
All right. Just want to mention one more time, if you go to our website, wordoflifemn.org/faith and freedom, you'll see his previous training session if you want to do that, and any other events that we've had, and any events that are coming up. So let's give Lauren a hand, please. Thank you. Thank you all for coming.